All right, back with another Monday tier rankings video. Been a lot of fun to do them this season. Really enjoyed it. Let's start off with the Cincinnati Bengals, who are they're Super Bowl contenders. They are. I mean, another big win against Buffalo. They've kind of owned Buffalo at this point, but they've just looked really good since that rough start to the season. T. Higgins is back, so like that last kind of question mark is now answered. He was great. So yeah. Super Bowl contenders feels obvious here. And also for the Giants, I have had them in the plucky but bad tier, but they're just bad. I mean, if Daniel Jones is out for the year, which seems possible, like, they're just bad. They're just a bad football team. That was a mess out there. Sure, if Tyrod Taylor is there, it would help. But Kyle mentioned on the podcast, and it's true. They need like 10 new starters on offense. I guess 9 new starters on offense. Like it's a rough situation for them. It's just tough. The Niners are still in the for sure playoffs. However, tier for me, they didn't play last week, so that's where I had them last week. It's gonna keep them there. And for the Saints, listen, it wasn't the prettiest game against Chicago, but you made it happen. You were able to get the victory. I'm still gonna keep them in the maybe playoffs tier. That feels right for me. They feel like a team that is probably a playoff team. But, not definitely, I guess. The division makes it a lot easier for them, obviously. But, maybe playoffs feels right for now. The Bears, I'm in between plucky but bad and just bad here. I think I'm going to go with, I don't know, I guess they were competitive enough. I'm still going to keep them in just bad. I still think their defense isn't very good. They looked competitive against the Saints, but I'm still not crazy, not a huge fan about the Bears at this point. The Packers coming off of a big win against a backup quarterback for the Rams, but still were able to. They looked better in this game. They did. Their offense looked better. Defense was able to do some nice things against easy competition, but still, it's good to do that. I just don't think they're very good. I'm gonna put them into plucky but bad, but maybe moving their way up in the world, right? I kind of view this as where are you right now, not a prediction of where you're going to end up at the end of the season. Right now, they feel like they're plucky but bad. Could climb up the ladder a little bit, though. Still technically in the playoff race here, so interesting there. The Cardinals are a team that they're bad. The Clayton Tune-led Cardinals did not look so great. Apparently, Kyler's going to come back, so they're that alone could move them up a tier. But for now, I'm going to keep them here. We'll see how Kyler does when he comes back in kind of a tough situation. The Ravens are Super Bowl contenders. Again, feels kind of obvious. Tied for the best record in the AFC. And again, you look at their 2 losses. They could easily be undefeated right now. It's totally that was totally within the cards for them. So. At the end of the day, they're not undefeated. They beat themselves at times, but they've done a good chunk of nice things. Baltimore has. The Dallas Cowboys, I'm still not going to put them in Super Bowl contenders, but they've looked really impressive these past 2 weeks. They're for sure playoffs. However, I still do have some questions about this team. They do feel a bit CeeDee Lamb dependent in the passing game at times. I still, Dak Prescott has his high moments, but has his low moments as well. So there is that, that factor, but they're for sure a playoff team. And for the Bills, I mean, is it crazy to put them into maybe playoffs here? I feel like I've done this before as well. I think I did this 2 weeks ago. They beat Tampa Bay. I put them back in for sure playoffs. However, now I'm dropping them down again. I mean, you're 5-4 at this point. And while they've blown out a couple of bad teams, and that's kind of saving the perception of them right now because a lot of their overall stats are still very good, they need Josh Allen to do everything for them. Josh Allen's great. Josh Allen's amazing. He can do a lot. You don't want to force him to have to do everything, and that's what they're doing right now. The defense has actually looked all right despite the injuries, but offensively, it's Allen and Diggs right now. They need someone else to get going. They just do. The Chargers, I believe the Chargers play tonight. They are mid. They've been there for I feel like, decades at this point. The Broncos, I'll keep them in the plucky but bad tier. Again, another team that did not play this week. So, I believe I had them there last week. I don't fully remember. Sometimes I might move a team up or down a tier when they're under bye just because I don't remember. But as of right now, that feels like where they should be. The Detroit Lions, again, who have had a couple disappointing losses on the year. I believe I've kept them in the for sure playoffs. However, since they lost to Baltimore, and I'm still going to keep them there for now. So that's where they're at. The Chiefs, I mean, you could honestly make an argument for that dropping them out of the Super Bowl contender tier. I'm not going to do that, though. Yes, their offense there's been issues with the Chiefs' offense. There has. They still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Travis Kelce. They still have Andy Reid. I think they're going to figure it out. It's just like, oh yeah, that's a bit of a concern. The receiving core not really having a lot of guys who can get open. I did not think they were the better team against Miami. They found a way to win, but I thought that Miami, on a per play basis, looked better. Miami just beat themselves a ton. So for Kansas City, there's some reasons for worry, but at the same time, they're still a very, very much a contender, I think. The Falcons are mid. Again, things to like about the Falcons, but I brought it up on the podcast, and I think it's true. It's like, why are we trying to beat the Titans? Why is that what we're going with here? There's, the Titans are not one of these, these are teams you should be trying to beat. The Bengals, the Eagles obviously are going to be contenders. Like, these are the teams you should be trying to replicate, right? Those are the teams you want to be. Those are the teams you should be trying to, make something happen. Not that there's anything wrong with being the Titans. The Titans are, they've been a good franchise for these past 7 years or so. But, like, that's not the goal. That's not the, what you're looking for. That's a good situation. The Arthur Smith thing hasn't really worked out at this point. But again, still have them in the mid-tier. There's still things to like about them. And they're still, a game out of the playoffs? It's very possible they could get in. The Cleveland Browns. So I've had the Cleveland Browns in the mid-tier, just to be a hater, I suppose. Actually, I let it go. I'm not putting them in the mid-tier now. I'm going to keep them in the maybe playoffs. It's hard to get in the AFC. It just is. Especially when you factor in, their division. I have 2 Super Bowl contenders in that division, right? So, I haven't given the Steelers yet, but, I can go with them as well in a second. They are also in the, maybe playoffs tier. For the Browns, what's getting exciting for me with Cleveland is, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but if you're a Browns fan, what you're happy about is Deshaun Watson looked a lot healthier in this game. And I've part of why I've been so down on Cleveland is the assumption that Deshaun Watson wasn't going to play good football this season due to his injury. If he actually can come back and look good, then that completely changes things. And I think that I do feel like they could even be up a tier before, this is all said and done. So he still has to play like Houston Deshaun Watson, which he kind of hasn't, but for now, that's notable. Talk about the Steelers now. Also, I'll bring up the Eagles in a second. I kind of glossed over them. Sorry, Eagles fans. Hopefully you didn't just click off the video yet. But the Steelers, talk about them. Kenny Pickett's looked better. He's looked better, which is nice to see. And that's why I think I did have them in the mid-tier last week. I think I had every team in the mid-tier last week. I bumping them up a little bit because I think their offense has looked competent. Like, everyone was talking about, wow, Kenny Pickett sucks and Will Levis is great last. I thought that they were pretty much the same. I didn't think there was a big jump between either of them last week. I think, Kenny Pickett's, listen, I don't know if he's the long-term guy. He probably isn't, right? But for this season, he's at least showing that he can be an okay quarterback who can win you these types of games. Their defense is still great. Mike Tomlin still finds ways to win. George Pickens is still awesome. So I'm going to put them in maybe playoffs. And then the Eagles, again, it kind of goes without saying. That's kind of why I glossed over it. They have 1 loss on the season. They just beat Dallas in a competitive game. There's still maybe some defensive issues for Philadelphia, but as a whole, Jalen Hurts was awesome. He's an MVP candidate. This is still a really good football team. And in my opinion, they're still Super Bowl contenders. Moving on to the Houston Texans. The defense didn't have a great day, and they had some injuries against Tampa Bay. But with CJ Stroud doing what he just did, I think I'm putting him in the maybe playoffs tier. I do. I think that it's an offensive league, and if you can put up those kind of numbers against a team defense that have been playing well up until at least solidly well up until that game, and now you're making Bucs fans like me say you got to fire Todd Bowles. Anytime you're getting people of opposing teams to say they got to fire their head coach, you're doing something right. So definitely a playoff contender. The Houston Texans are at this point. Got some work to do for sure. AFC is tough, but I think you got to put them in that tier. I think. The Colts, I don't know. They're still mid. Gardner Minshew's been fine. This is an interesting team for the future, but it's just with no Anthony Richardson, it's just not an exciting team for me personally. But the exciting thing I think if you're the Colts is where you're going. If Richardson is the guy, reminds me of the Texans' first year with Deshaun Watson. Watson looked great for 5 games and then got injured, and it was things aren't going well, but at least Deshaun Watson looks good. Hopefully, next year things work out well. But for now, just kind of, they're just a mid team. They're not bad. They're mid. The Rams, who I felt, hype was pretty high with the Rams. I still think I'm going to keep them in mid. I do think that part of the issue last week was, Matt Stafford means a lot to this team. And if he's not there, they're going to look worse. So they were worse than the mid. They were into just bad tier last week, right? But I think that with Stafford, I think that he's enough to jump them 2 tiers. I do. So that's why I have that there. The Dolphins, they had been Super Bowl contenders in the past. I think you got to drop them a tier now. I think they have to be in the for sure playoffs. However, tier, it's a narrative that I think is a little bit unfair. The whole look at their record against winning teams kind of thing. I think that's getting a bit overblown. I do. Because they lost their last 6 games against winning teams, but a couple of those Tua wasn't even out there for, and it's they lost. They're 0-3 this year. I don't know how much to take away from that. And like I said, I thought they played better than Kansas City in that game. Kansas City just made a couple big plays, which credit to them. Good teams find a way to win, but because they have that that scenario now, and because their offense hasn't looked as good against the great teams, I do think it's enough to drop them down a tier as of right now. Could they get back to the Super Bowl contenders tier? Absolutely. The Vikings, I think I put the Vikings in just bad after they lost Cousins. I kind of said, that's it. It's over. They found a way to beat Atlanta, who I have in the mid-tier. I think I'm going to keep Minnesota in the mid-tier. Listen, they're in a playoff spot right now and, now have a head-to-head victory against Atlanta, which could come, crucial in the wild card race. They're fighting for the playoffs. I think they could make the playoffs. Again, I don't exactly view the tiers as simply just are you going to maybe make the playoffs so then you're in that tier? I view it kind of are you a maybe playoff team or are you worse than that? I think they're worse than that, but I do think they could make the playoffs if that makes sense. Next up, we have the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots are a bad football team who do not play well. There's some things to like. I know Patriots fans might try to say, hey, they should be in the plucky but bad tier. Maybe, but I have them in the just bad tier, partially because it's funny. That's a little bit of my reasoning there. Mac Jones, did make a couple nice plays, but still isn't consistent enough. They have a lot of work they have to do, this offseason. They just do. The Jets are still mid for me. I still think mid feels right for the Jets. I believe I had them there last week. They haven't played yet this week, so that checks out. Panthers are a bad football team. Bryce Young did not look good out there. Really rough box score for him. So that's where I have them. The Seahawks, I'm still putting in the maybe playoffs tier. I still think they get in the NFC. Part of it is just the NFC. There's not the competition. If the Seahawks were in the AFC, I wouldn't be convinced that they're a playoff team for sure. But I know last week was tough. Baltimore does kind of do that to teams. That is a thing. Baltimore's really good, so that's part of why I'm not going to crush them totally for it. But there's no getting around it. They've had some rough games this season. They just have, and they have to, and Geno Smith, I brought it up on the podcast. It's time to start asking the question. Geno Smith is a career, passer rating guy of 85. His passer rating this season is 86. He's doing what you typically expect from Geno Smith. It's just last year he was so much better than that. He's still shown flashes of last year's Geno Smith, but so far he's kind of just been an inconsistent quarterback for Seattle. So he's, that for them to get in a higher tier, he has to start playing like last year Geno Smith. That's how I view it. The Buccaneers, listen, I think they could get back to the mid tier. I think that even their ceiling could be maybe playoffs if things get together. But right now, they're plucky but bad. They just are. That's where you have to view them right now. The defense playing as bad as it did last week. Baker looked great, but Baker's been inconsistent all season long. The offense has been inconsistent all season long. Again, where are you right now? This is where they're at right now. It's not a prediction of the future. I hope that they can get better, and, they do have, their schedule is much easier in the second half. It is. They play San Francisco, but then they play a lot of divisional matchups and, winnable games. I'm not saying they're going to win every one of those games, but winnable games. It's like a team like Tennessee next week is like that. I'm not saying they're going to win, but that's a winnable game. But as of what they're doing right now, I don't know if they can win a bunch of winnable games with how they're playing. So, tough situation there for Tampa Bay right now. The Raiders, hey, I I still don't know what this team is doing. Where this team is going, I should say. There are some nice offensive pieces. Obviously, we know Max Crosby is great. I'm not going to take too much away from beating the Giants. I still think they're plucky but bad. I do. Aiden O'Connell's interesting. They're an interesting football team. I just don't know how good they are right now. The Titans are another plucky but bad team for me as it stands right now. Will Levis, again, looked interesting. Throwing the ball to DeAndre Hopkins helps, and I do think they're getting better quarterback play now than they were at the beginning of the season, but I still think there's some issues offensively here for this team, so plucky but bad feels fair for me. Washington, I'll put Washington in the mid-tier. Again, Sam Howell is almost the definition of a mid-quarterback, right? He'll have some great moments. He'll have some disastrous moments for Washington. They have good receivers. They did just trade away both their pass rushers, but their defense didn't look like it missed them that much against New England. Granted, not a tough offense to look good against, but still, it's not a fantastic team, but they're mid. That's how I view it. They could also, I think them or Minnesota will probably end up as that 7th seed. And then Jacksonville, again, I'm sure Jaguars fans want to be in the Super Bowl contenders. To me, they're for sure playoffs, however, because they have had their down moments. But when they've looked good, they've looked great. And I could easily see them getting into the Super Bowl contenders tier because as of right now, this is the least amount of Super Bowl contenders I've had. Only 4 Super Bowl contenders. 3 of them in the AFC, only 1 in the NFC currently. So, interesting stuff. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.